One of the women, draped in a pastel cardigan thrown loosely over her shoulders, approached with a seemingly friendly smile. She touched Olivia's arm, wearing the expression of someone about to impart a crucial lesson. "Dear, you may want to observe how we do things. If you don't have a sense of class, it's kinder to bow out." Her voice carried a syrupy kindness that barely concealed sharp hostility. "My advice: golf clubs like this have rules for a reason. The membership committee might not be too happy if they see you tramping around in discount sneakers." A cluster of onlookers erupted in low snickers, swirling champagne in their flutes as they watched Olivia's reaction. She inclined her head, meeting the older woman's gaze with steady calm. The older woman shrugged, tapping her wedding ring on the rim of her glass. "I'm only trying to be helpful," she said. "Surely you can appreciate that." Olivia said nothing. Someone from behind flicked a stray golf tee across the grass, letting it bounce near her feet. Another voice chimed in. "I heard she's engaged to some office drone. Maybe he's just a money courier, not a real professional." That drew more laughter. The older woman turned away, satisfied she had delivered the final blow of condescension. At the far edge of the group, a staff member stepped forward. He wore a club manager's name tag, and from his reluctant posture it was obvious he'd been pressured to intervene. He cleared his throat, then said quietly to Olivia, "Ma'am, we need to ensure all visitors meet our dress code and membership qualifications. Might I see your membership card or guest pass?" She slipped a hand inside her tote, producing a small piece of identification that was indeed a guest pass. She offered it calmly. He inspected it, glanced at the subtle folds, and frowned. "I'm afraid this pass isn't current. You'd need an updated sponsor or be on the official visitors list." The onlookers fell silent, listening carefully. The manager tried to keep his voice low, but a few women sidled closer, pretending they were just sipping champagne while eavesdropping. Olivia accepted the pass back with a soft nod. Around them, the hush felt heavy, as though everyone anticipated her departure. She looked at the manager, then at the group. Not a single person defended her. Even those who had known her from school gazed off, feigning distraction. The manager gave an apologetic half smile. "Perhaps it's best if you leave the grounds for now," he said. "We do have membership standards. You understand?" A hush of triumph flickered across a few faces. Olivia tightened her grip on her canvas bag, exhaled softly, and nodded once. She didn't raise her voice or plead. She merely stepped aside, letting him lead her a few paces away from the center of the group. But the final humiliation was yet to come. As she moved, a younger woman with an over-gelled bob cut decided to deliver one last parting shot. She raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Even if your husband had money, I doubt he'd be allowed in a place like this. Don't take it personally, it's just how high-end clubs work." She chuckled, tipping her glass in a mock toast. "We do have standards to maintain, after all." The group inhaled with satisfaction. Champagne glasses rose in unison for a clinking toast, and the hush of cruelty thickened so vivid that even the caddy standing nearby shifted uncomfortably. Olivia paused at the edge of the gathering, giving them all a faint smile. "Thank you," she said, though not a single person understood what she meant by that. Then she turned toward the path leading back to the main building, prepared to leave quietly. The manager walked at her side, shoulders stiff as though uncertain if he should appear more apologetic or firm. Behind them, the group shared glances of smug victory, raising their glasses higher. One or two already typed messages on their phones, likely sending updates to that private chat about their successful ousting of the intruder. But before Olivia and the manager could make it halfway, a new sound shattered the complacent quiet of the afternoon. It was a distant mechanical thrum that grew louder with each passing second. Heads tilted upward, searching for the source. The women shielding their eyes from the sun saw the outline of a helicopter, a sleek, modern craft that bore a bold, recognizable emblem, the Blackwell Group. Gasps rippled through the cluster. The Blackwell Group was known across the globe, an investment empire that influenced entire economies with one man at its helm, Nathan Blackwell, the elusive billionaire who often avoided public eye. The helicopter swooped down its rotors, sending gusts of wind that rustled hats and sent champagne flutes trembling on their trays. The manager halted mid-step, eyes wide, realizing that the helicopter was descending onto the very course, a move that was reserved only for the highest-ranking owners or special events. Murmurs swept through the group, a sense of awe mixing with alarm. The socialites moved back, some struggling to keep their hair from whipping into disarray. A few tried to move behind carts for better vantage points, curiosity spiking. In the hush that followed, the helicopter settled onto a patch of grass near the fairway, blowing dust and bits of leaves in swirling patterns. The door slid open and a tall, impeccably dressed man emerged, stepping onto the lawn with casual authority. He wore a bespoke suit, slim-fitting around the waist, crisp collar, no tie. His hair was combed neatly, face set in calm determination. Those who recognized him inhaled sharply. This was Nathan Blackwell in the flesh, the owner of not just the famed Blackwell investment empire, but also the new majority stakeholder of this very golf course. A hush deeper than before fell over every spectator. He didn't pause to greet the staff or wave to the onlookers. Instead, he turned to scan the area until he found Olivia. The moment he saw her, his expression softened. He walked across the grass with decisive steps, ignoring the stunned silence of the onlookers. The manager, still standing beside Olivia, froze as Nathan approached, uncertain if he should speak or move aside. The hum of the helicopter's engines quieted to a steady whir, leaving the hush of subdued awe. Then, in full view of everyone, Nathan reached Olivia and wrapped his arms around her. His voice, low and gentle, carried across the green. "Have you been waiting long?" "I'm sorry I'm late." In that instant, the group that had taunted her realized who she truly was. A ripple of shock moved through them. Eyes darted from Nathan to Olivia's face, searching for some sign of explanation. She returned Nathan's embrace with calm acceptance, as though this sort of moment was familiar, not a show. Even so, the staff and guests around them could see the difference in their manners, a mutual respect that hadn't been forced or staged. Nathan stepped back, keeping an arm around her shoulders, then surveyed the stunned crowd. His gaze rested on the manager, whose face had gone ashen. "I own this entire establishment," Nathan said in a measured tone, "and I want to know who asked my wife to leave." A startled hush persisted. No one dared speak. The manager opened his mouth, but no words emerged. Bethany, who had led much of the teasing, retreated a step, hiding behind a friend. Another woman, the one who had claimed Olivia's husband wouldn't be allowed in, tried to look anywhere but at Nathan. The older woman, who gave condescending advice, fidgeted with her cardigan, eyes wide. Nathan's expression remained calm, but an edge of controlled anger underpinned his voice. "Anyone who insulted her," he said, "and anyone who deemed her unfit for this club is hereby banned." He let the words sink in. Permanently. It landed like a thunderclap. Gasps flared up. Bethany took a quivering step forward, stammering something about misunderstandings. Another quickly chimed in that they had only been joking, that it was all in fun. Nathan's eyes narrowed. "It's not a misunderstanding when you deliberately humiliate someone," he said quietly. Then he turned to Olivia, brushing a stray wisp of her hair aside, voice gentler. "Today," he said, "this entire course is for you. If you want to practice your swing, we'll do it together. If you want to close this place for the day, it's yours to decide." Olivia, her posture still subdued, turned to the manager. She didn't demand an apology or show anger. She glanced at the small cluster of women who had tormented her moments earlier. Each tried to avoid her gaze, as though the grass beneath their feet might swallow them. After a pause, she spoke softly. "Thank you for your time," she said, not addressing any one person in particular. It was unclear if she was expressing gratitude to Nathan or to the manager or to the entire group. Her words seemed to bypass petty revenge. She looked at Bethany, then at the older woman, and finally at the manager, who bowed his head in shame. Nathan slid his hand into hers, interlacing their fingers. The helicopter's rotors spun slowly, stirring the air. A few caddies, uncertain of protocol, hovered nearby, waiting. The entire golf course had gone still, except for that mechanical whir spectators from other holes craning their necks to see. The hush thickened, every breath uneasy. Then one of the braver women ventured forward, her expression drawn. We didn't realize," she said. Her voice faltered. "If we had known," she trailed off. Nathan arched an eyebrow, as though that excuse was beneath addressing. Olivia, for her part, gave a small nod, almost like a bow. "Thank you," she repeated, though this time her tone carried a hint of finality. It seemed to say, "I understand who you are." Moments later, the manager cleared his throat and turned to the group, announcing in a tight voice, "The owner has requested that certain members be disinvited from all further activities. I'll be taking your names now." He opened a small leather notebook, ignoring their protests and frantic glances. Bethany's cheeks flushed with angry embarrassment, and she muttered something about calling her lawyer, but the manager continued methodically. Olivia and Nathan stood aside, quietly conferring. She touched his lapel as if to calm him. He listened, his expression flickering between protectiveness and acceptance. In that hush, A memory rose for Olivia, a moment in a quiet orchard where her father, a stern man with deep resources, had once told her, "You can't control whether people will respect you. All you can control is how you carry yourself." She had taken that lesson to heart. The orchard had been a place of reflection, a symbol of the wealth her family possessed but never flaunted. Perhaps that was where she learned her stillness, her refusal to boast or defend herself with words. And it was the same orchard where she had first met Nathan, introduced by a mutual acquaintance who insisted they shared a rare sense of discretion. The memory dissolved as Nathan guided her toward the fairway. A hush of parted onlookers made way for them. A few golf carts lurched aside in reverence. The women who remained silent stared at their feet, some trembling at the knowledge they'd been banned. Others carefully tried to appear neutral in hopes of salvaging membership. The manager's voice droned on behind them, politely but firmly identifying each offender. Olivia didn't look back. She walked with steady steps, old sneakers moving across the expensive turf. In her posture there was no triumph or smugness, just calm acceptance of how events had unfolded. They passed the clubhouse where a cluster of staff members paused work to watch. Some gave polite bows or greetings, recognizing their employer for the first time. Beyond the clubhouse lay a manicured path leading to a scenic vantage point overlooking a small water feature. Nathan steered Olivia there, away from prying eyes, as the helicopter's pilot waited for instructions. Once they were alone in the relative calm of that viewing spot, Nathan reached for her hand again. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said softly, "but I'm here now." She studied his face without speaking. He let out a measured breath, glancing toward the glimmering water. A faint breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass. The scene might have been picturesque under different circumstances. "I know you prefer to keep things simple," he continued. "I should have realized these people might treat you poorly if they didn't know who you are." He paused. "Though I admire that you still came hoping to reconnect with old friends, not expecting any special treatment." She touched the scratched face of her watch as though remembering something. Perhaps she recalled the day she'd received it, an old family heirloom given quietly with the words, "True worth has nothing to do with outward shine." Her father had slipped it onto her wrist when she was just a teenager, telling her to keep it safe. Over the years she'd scratched it, worn it daily, refused to replace it with something more fashionable. It reminded her of that orchard of home, of the power that lay beneath outward appearances. A staff member approached from behind, bowing slightly. "Sir," he said, "we've prepared a private area in case you and Mrs. Blackwell would like to enjoy the rest of your day." Nathan turned to Olivia, deferring to her. She took a moment, gazing across the expanse of green. Off in the distance, the group of women stood near the manager, some of them already grabbing their belongings and making humiliating departures. The earlier bravado had drained from their faces. With a gentle movement, Olivia shook her head. "It's all right," she said to the staff member. "I'd rather not stay." Her voice carried the quiet authority that left no room for objection. Nathan gave a single nod to the staffer, who bowed again and retreated. Then he walked with Olivia back toward the helicopter, ignoring the stares from remaining onlookers. A few tried to approach, murmuring apologies or seeking favor, but Nathan's unwavering expression kept them at bay. At the landing site, the helicopter pilot stood by, ready to assist. Nathan helped Olivia climb inside, then followed, shutting the door behind them. The rotors kicked up a storm of wind as the craft lifted off the grass. Below, the fancy cars, the manicured lawns, and the handful of people left outside all shrank to miniature. In that moment, it seemed that every petty insult vanished under the rush of altitude. Inside the helicopter, Nathan settled next to Olivia, leaning in to speak over the engine's noise. "Let's go somewhere quieter," he said. She nodded, her gaze on the horizon where the city beckoned in the distance. The pilot confirmed the coordinates, and soon they soared over suburban sprawl, heading toward the skyline. Nathan's hand remained on hers, a silent vow that she would never again face such humiliation alone. A memory intruded again, the day she'd first met Nathan at that modest midtown cafe. She recalled how he'd seemed mildly amused by the decor, unpretentious for a man of his station. She remembered him quietly paying the bill for both of them, then stepping outside into the swirl of city traffic with an umbrella. They'd walked half a block in shared silence before he told her his name. She had guessed he was an ordinary man with a thoughtful manner, never suspecting his global influence. Only later, when a black car pulled up to whisk him away, did she glimpse the truth. But even then, he never boasted. Instead, he'd invited her to dinner the next evening, saying he wanted to hear more of her thoughts on living simply in a complex world. From that day onward, they'd formed an unbreakable bond rooted in a mutual appreciation for what lay beneath surfaces. The helicopter flew over the city's edges, crossing the line where suburban estates gave way to urban sprawl. Nathan signaled to the pilot, who adjusted course. Soon they landed on a private helipad atop a tall building, one of many properties the Blackwell Group owned. Nathan escorted Olivia inside, where a private elevator whisked them down to a quiet suite. The space was refined, but not ostentatious, cream-colored walls, a few tasteful pieces of art, and large windows overlooking the metropolis. He poured her a glass of cool water, setting it on a side table near a comfortable couch. She sank onto the cushions, setting her canvas tote at her feet. Nathan joined her, not speaking for a moment. He studied her expression, searching for any hurt or anger. She just looked at him with that same composure. Finally, he said, "How do you feel?" A simple question, but it carried the weight of the day's events. She rested a hand over the scratched watch, gave a slight shrug. He nodded, understanding her unspoken message. They both knew she never craved revenge or demanded apologies. She only wished to see who would stand with her in sincerity. And now it was clearer than ever that many of those old-school acquaintances never truly valued her beyond what they could see on the surface. They sat quietly, letting the hum of city life below fill the silence. After a few minutes, Nathan reached into his jacket's inner pocket and withdrew a small folder. "I had a thought," he said. "I'd like to sponsor a golf tournament in your name. A charitable event. Invite people who've been excluded or marginalized by the very system that tries to keep clubs elite. Show them how it feels to belong somewhere without being judged by clothes or bank accounts." She turned her eyes to him, a faint spark of interest lighting her features. He pressed on. "We can host it at the same course, or at one of the others I own. Make it open to those who don't typically get a chance to play. Help shift the culture away from all that petty gatekeeping." His voice softened, "But only if you want it." Olivia considered the idea. Scenes of the orchard flickered in her memory again, the orchard caretaker once explaining how each new blossom could grow into fruit if it wasn't strangled by the old ways. She recalled how her father's philanthropic efforts had always been about quiet impact, not grand statements. That orchard was part of a foundation that supported struggling families. Maybe now was a chance for her to carry on a similar philosophy in a world addicted to outward display. She looked at Nathan, gave a small nod of agreement. He smiled, relieved. Later that evening, they left the suite, crossing the building's lobby to a waiting car. The driver took them to a modest restaurant tucked away in an older neighborhood, one known for home-style cooking and unpretentious charm. Nathan had always said it was his favorite place to unwind. They're seated at a corner table with simple cutlery and a checkered tablecloth. They planned the outline of the charitable event. They decided the theme would be golf for everyone, with proceeds benefiting youth sports programs. They wanted an open invitation to players from all walks of life: teachers, bus drivers, nurses, local shop owners, anyone who'd never set foot in a private golf club before. Olivia tapped the scratched watch as if marking time, occasionally scribbling notes on a paper napkin. The hush between them spoke of genuine partnership, not just a superficial marriage. Word traveled fast in the days that followed. The same circles that once scorned Olivia found themselves reeling from the news that they'd been permanently banned by the new club owner. A few attempted to call the club management, arguing that it was all a misunderstanding. Others sent letters to Nathan's office praising his philanthropic vision in hopes of being pardoned. But the manager remained firm on the ban for any known participants in the humiliation. Meanwhile, local news outlets caught wind of a billionaire planning a charitable golf tournament. Rumors swirled about how he was inspired by his wife's experience at an exclusive club. For a time, the gossip columns were abuzz with speculation about who Olivia really was, since she never appeared on society pages or at glitzy events. Some even doubted she was from any known wealthy family, pointing to her simple attire and lack of public profile. Behind the scenes, Olivia quietly organized the tournament with Nathan's team. She requested that admission be free, no required dress code, and caddies provided for newcomers who might not have clubs or golf knowledge. Sponsors stepped in to cover costs once they saw the buzz around the event. A portion of the Blackwell Group's philanthropic branch allocated funds to ensure anyone could participate. The course staff, previously accustomed to catering to the elite, adapted to this new philosophy with some initial reluctance. But under direct instructions from the top, they adjusted rules, replaced the usual coat and tie signage with welcoming messages, and set up training sessions for novices. The entire culture began to shift. In a quiet moment before the tournament, Olivia revisited the orchard from her childhood. It still belonged to her family, nestled outside the city with rows of apple trees and a small caretaker's cottage. She walked through those familiar lanes, the air filled with the scent of green leaves and fruit in the early stages of ripening. The caretaker, now older, recognized her and nodded in greeting. They walked side by side without conversation, occasionally pausing by a branch heavy with budding apples. She recalled how once as a child she'd asked if it was possible for a stunted sapling to bear good fruit. The caretaker had said, "Sometimes the smallest sapling, given patience and care, grows the sweetest apples." That memory lingered as she returned to the city, more determined than ever to see the upcoming golf event reflect that principle of nurturing those often overlooked. When the day arrived, the golf course, yes, the very same that had been the site of her humiliation, buzzed with an unfamiliar crowd. Families with children, retirees with second-hand clubs, young professionals with no experience. Rows of colorful tents replaced the usual austere aesthetics. Volunteers guided participants from one station to another, teaching them how to hold a golf club properly. Smiles abounded where once scorn had thrived. Nathan, in a casual polo and slacks, roamed the grounds, greeting people and sharing laughs. Olivia stood near the registration area, quietly welcoming each participant. Many didn't realize who she was until they saw the way staff deferred to her. Even then, she carried no trace of arrogance. She simply made sure everyone felt included. A group of kids from an inner-city sports program arrived in a rumbling old bus, wide-eyed at the greenery. Olivia greeted them with a small wave, introduced them to a volunteer instructor, and watched them scatter across the practice area, eager to try. Another bus brought a group of elderly individuals from a local retirement home, some in wheelchairs, some using walkers, none of whom had ever considered setting foot on a private course. The usual staff, wearing new name tags that read "Here to Help," assisted them in adjusting their swings or exploring the paths by cart. The entire place radiated a sense of discovery and joy. Cameras from local press captured the scene, reporters marveling at the transformation. Now and then Olivia caught glimpses of other onlookers at the gate's faces from her old circle who had not been banned but had chosen not to show up. She saw them peering in, uncertain how to reconcile the place they once knew with the celebration taking place. A couple of them, wearing anxious expressions, ventured forward to see if they might find her. She politely accepted their greetings, but did not linger. She had a schedule to keep, ensuring each newcomer was welcomed. The difference in her stance was clear. She was no longer the timid outsider cowering under brand-obsessed scrutiny. She was a calm facilitator, orchestrating a gathering that valued everyone. Toward midday, Nathan joined her near a small platform that had been set up for announcements. She could see the lines of people waiting to play, the clusters of families, the novices practicing near the driving range. Before stepping up to speak, he glanced at Olivia with pride. She only gave a slight tilt of her head, urging him on. He took the microphone, greeted the crowd, and explained the charitable purpose of the event. He spoke about raising funds for youth sports, about the importance of inclusivity in recreational spaces. Finally, he introduced Olivia, calling her the inspiration behind it all. She approached the microphone with measured steps, old scratched watch visible on her wrist. Her words were brief, thanking everyone for coming, emphasizing the hope that no one would feel excluded or judged by appearance. Though she spoke softly, the microphone carried her voice across the hushed crowd. Applause broke out, genuine and warm, washing away the memory of that snide laughter from weeks before. After the short ceremony, she descended from the platform and found a line of individuals waiting. Some carried folded notes, others offered shy smiles. "I wanted to say thanks," said a young man, shaking her hand. "I've never been allowed into a private course before. They always turned me away." Another woman stepped up, a mother with 2 teenage daughters. "They told me once that my outfit wasn't acceptable," she explained. "But you gave us a place today." Olivia accepted each word without fanfare, only nodding with quiet grace. It was as though every note of gratitude soaked into that orchard inside her, soul-watering seeds of change. As the sun began to settle on the horizon, participants drifted home with souvenirs, small tokens commemorating the day, memories of laughter on the green. The staff, though exhausted, seemed uplifted by the success of the event. Local media outlets labeled it a game changer in country club culture, praising the open invitation and philanthropic spirit. Nathan and Olivia took a final walk around the fairway, picking up stray golf balls left behind by enthusiastic amateurs. A gentle breeze rustled the trees lining the course. She paused at a small pond near the final hole, reflecting on how different it all felt compared to that humiliating morning. Back at home, a spacious but understated property Nathan owned in the city, Olivia unwound by sorting through letters she'd received during the event. Some were from grateful attendees. Others were from individuals who apologized for misjudging her for believing rumors that she was just some poor girl or clueless wannabe. She set these letters aside carefully. She had an idea forming. In the days that followed, more letters arrived at the Blackwell Group offices. Some from the same socialites who had humiliated her, now expressing regret, claiming they hadn't known her situation or identity. They wrote about feeling remorse about re-examining their own prejudices. Each letter carried a degree of self-reflection, though whether sincere or self-serving was hard to tell. Olivia neither gloated nor dismissed them. She quietly collected them, storing them in a plain folder that she kept in a locked drawer. One evening, she showed Nathan her expanding collection of apology letters along with notes of gratitude from the tournament. "I'm thinking of creating an art project," she said. She opened the folders to reveal a range of handwriting styles and paper qualities, some on expensive stationery, others on simple notebook pages. "I want to show how words can wound but also how they can heal," she continued. Her voice remained steady, never slipping into a self-righteous tone. Nathan gave her that gentle smile of encouragement. He had seen her heart in action many times, each time reminded of why he cherished her so deeply. Soon, true worth, beyond the brands, took shape. Olivia reached out to a small gallery she knew from her philanthropic connections. She didn't mention her last name or her husband's identity, only that she had an exhibit that blended letters of apology and messages of gratitude into a reflection on class and empathy. The gallery's curator found the concept compelling and set a date for a small showing. Olivia spent hours carefully arranging the letters on large panels, each panel carrying a mix of cruel remarks and heartfelt regrets. She intentionally omitted the writers' names, focusing on the words themselves. She added short quotes from individuals who'd been touched by her charitable tournament, praising the new spirit of inclusion they felt. The night of the exhibit arrived. The gallery was modest, not typically a hotspot for high society, which suited her. She wore a simple dress again with that watch on her wrist. Nathan attended, staying in the background. Friends from various walks of life came, from orchard caretakers to the newly minted golfers who had found acceptance on the green. The panels drew quiet onlookers. They read the vicious remarks about how her sneakers and jeans had no place at a country club. They saw how the same individuals later wrote, "I'm sorry I mocked you. I've learned not to judge." Mixed among these letters were pieces praising her charitable effort. "I never realized how it felt to hold a golf club until your tournament," wrote one teenage boy. Another read, "Thank you for proving that real class is compassion, not couture." The effect was a tapestry of changed perspectives. Near the end of the opening, a small group of women in designer coats and heels slipped into the gallery, casting uncertain glances around the room. Olivia recognized some as the same who had gloated during her humiliation. She watched them read the panels, seeing their expressions darken with regret. They approached her with cautious steps, offering shy greetings. One spoke in a halting voice, "We want to say sorry again. We wrote you letters, but we didn't know if you got them." Olivia nodded, letting them see the panels. She didn't label them as these women's letters, but the women recognized their own words. They turned away, tears brimming. Before they left, they murmured more apologies, some hugging her gently. She accepted with that same quiet grace, never scolding or basking in their discomfort. In the aftermath, news of the exhibit spread. Journalists wrote articles titled, "From Scorn to Empathy: How a Billionaire's Wife Used Forgiveness to Transform a Country Club Culture." Yet Olivia never gave flamboyant interviews or sought the spotlight. She let the letters speak for themselves. The orchard caretaker heard about it and came to visit, standing in front of the displays with misty eyes. When the caretaker saw Olivia, they just clasped her hands in a silent gesture of pride and understanding. Nathan too lingered near the back, observing how people reacted. He placed a supportive hand on her shoulder, telling her afterward that her unwavering kindness had achieved more than any stern rebuke could have. The transformation at the golf course itself was subtle but lasting. The staff, once conditioned to cater to a wealthy few, now found themselves welcoming a broader membership, people from varied incomes who supported the new philanthropic model. The old guard scowled or withdrew, not pleased at the shift. But the fresh wave of members, buoyed by the memory of that open tournament, built a more genuine community. Nathan took steps to ensure the club's official bylaws prohibited discriminatory membership practices. The manager who once asked Olivia to leave admitted he'd learned a deep lesson about superficial judgments. He took the lead in organizing future events that emphasized social responsibility, including a fundraiser for local sports academies. Occasionally, a black car would arrive at the orchard bringing staff from the golf course to see the place that shaped Olivia's worldview. She would greet them with calm courtesy, showing them the rows of apple trees, the quiet caretaker's cottage. Some found it bizarre that the orchard had no grand sign of wealth. But for Olivia, it was always the key to remembering that richness was about growth and nurturance, not show. There, in the orchard's hush, these staff members understood how she had become the woman who never needed to speak loudly to command respect. Back in the city, the exhibit True Worth, Beyond the Brands continued for a few weeks, drawing crowds intrigued by its premise. Each day, more letters arrived. Some were from strangers who wrote to confess their own experiences of judging or being judged. Others thanked her for spotlighting a universal problem. Olivia quietly added new entries to the panels, letting the living exhibit expand. She carefully balanced the hateful remarks with the responses of apology. A certain harmony emerged, illustrating how empathy can blossom from even the harshest seeds of scorn. Nathan watched in admiration, offering behind-the-scenes support to ensure the exhibit ran smoothly. Late one evening, after a day of greeting visitors at the gallery, Olivia and Nathan walked through the city streets together. The hum of traffic and neon lights surrounded them, but they strolled at an unhurried pace, her arm linked through his. He suggested they stop at the same modest cafe where they'd first met. Inside, they found a small table in the corner, the decor unchanged slightly, faded wallpaper shelves lined with mismatched teacups. Over coffee, they reflected on the journey from the moment she was humiliated on the golf course to the present wave of change. Nathan voiced his gratitude for her composure, remarking that he'd never seen someone respond to cruelty with such grace. She smiled faintly, tapping the scratched watch. That was all the answer needed. Around that time, a new rumor circulated that the same group who had humiliated Olivia was hosting secret gatherings to plot their return to elite social circles. They felt stung by the ban, desperate to salvage their reputations. A few wrote even more elaborate apology letters, trying to spin the narrative that they'd misunderstood who Olivia was. But those attempts fell flat. The golf course remained steadfast in its new inclusive stance. Banquets began featuring local businesses and charities instead of expensive brand showcases. The manager said membership requests poured in from families with modest incomes, excited to join a club that valued more than designer attire. The orchard caretaker eventually heard about these changes and gave a gentle smile, telling Olivia that good fruit can ripen where the soil is turned over. In time, the orchard caretaker retired, leaving the orchard in Olivia's name. She quietly established a small foundation to run it as a public space, offering weekend educational programs for children in underserved communities. In a symbolic step, she invited some of the new golf club members' families to visit, bridging worlds that rarely intersected. She never felt the need to mention her father's lineage or her husband's empire. The orchard simply became a place of honest connection, free from brand obsession or social ranking. Months passed, and the letters of apology slowed to a trickle. The True Worth exhibit concluded with many pieces donated to a public library so they could continue educating visitors about prejudice and empathy. Olivia began focusing on other philanthropic pursuits alongside Nathan, but she remained unassuming. Each time she joined him at a business event, she wore her old watch and plain attire, gently confounding those who expected a flashy billionaire's wife. Even so, high-level executives soon learned of her role in transforming the golf course's culture and approached her with newfound respect. She never demanded the spotlight, but it found her anyway through quiet word of mouth. One day, the manager from the golf course requested an audience with her. They met in a small conference room at the Blackwell Group's office. He brought a carefully wrapped item, an updated membership pass with Olivia's name emblazoned in elegant gold lettering. "I know you don't need a piece of plastic for a place you already own," he said, flushed with gratitude. "But I wanted to apologize again for that day. You were gracious. We were blind." She accepted the card with a nod, understanding the symbolic weight. Then he handed her a stack of new letters from members who had joined since the transformation, each one grateful for the club's fresh atmosphere. She smiled, placing them atop the old letters in her folder. They parted with mutual respect, no further words needed. As the seasons shifted, the orchard bore fruit in abundance, matching the quiet growth in the city's philanthropic circles. Nathan's helicopter visits to the orchard became less about dramatic entrances and more about simple weekend getaways. Once or twice, he jokingly asked if she wanted to arrive at an event the same way descending in spectacle. She always shook her head wearing a small grin. The helicopter landing at that golf course had been necessary only once to break the illusion that money and power belonged exclusively to those who boasted the loudest. Eventually, the memory of that humiliating scene on the golf course faded for most. But for Olivia, it remained a pivotal point in her story, proof that she didn't need to argue or explain herself to reveal who she was. The orchard caretaker's words echoed in her mind whenever she encountered new forms of snobbery. Growth can happen quietly, transforming hearts that once seemed hardened. She saw it in the manager and the staff and the families who came to the reformed club. Even those who once taunted her, some still defiant, had at least experienced a jolt of self-awareness. All of it combined to shift a corner of high society away from shallow elitism. In an unexpected turn, a major business publication contacted her for an in-depth profile, hoping to capture the essence of the billionaire's humble wife. She politely declined, sending a short note that read, "I prefer my work to speak rather than my words." The media outlet tried to piece together a story from secondary sources, but it lacked the heartbeat that only her perspective could provide. In the final article, they described her as a quiet force behind a cultural movement, though they could only guess at her motivations. That was enough for her. She didn't need a glossy profile. Meanwhile, the Orchard Foundation thrived, hosting summer camps for children, weekend retreats for senior citizens, and small local art fairs. Attendees discovered that the Orchard was open to all, no dress code or invitation required. Some recognized Olivia wandering among the trees, ensuring everything ran smoothly. They asked if she was staff or a volunteer. She simply smiled, never feeling the urge to declare ownership. The caretaker's cottage remained a humble landmark, a testament to how modesty coexisted with great potential. By the time a year had passed since that fateful golf course debacle, the entire narrative had come full circle. The Orchard blossomed every spring, the golf club hosted annual inclusive tournaments, and the city's philanthropic scene buzzed about the woman who'd changed everything. Late one afternoon, Nathan found her at home, sitting at a desk with her folder of letters. She had them spread out in sections, the hateful ones, the apologetic ones, the grateful ones. She was reorganizing them, perhaps for another exhibit, or simply to reflect. He stepped behind her, placed his hands gently on her shoulders, and said, "We should preserve these stories. They'll remind people what can happen when prejudice meets compassion." She turned her eyes, conveying gratitude. He squeezed her shoulders once, then reached for her old scratched watch, running a thumb over its worn face. Still ticking, he observed. She nodded, knowing it would keep ticking as long as she continued living by its quiet lesson, that true worth can't be measured by outward shine. She gathered the letters into a neat stack and placed them in a protective cover, marking them for future use. Some might find their way into a traveling exhibit, others might be donated to a museum or library. Her main goal was to let them remind future generations that even the harshest words could be transformed by humility and empathy. One final push came from a local arts organization that reached out about featuring true worth, beyond the brands, at a traveling cultural event. Olivia hesitated, worried about overshadowing the Orchard Foundation and the golf club's changes. But Nathan persuaded her it was a positive step. So in a modest ceremony, they shipped the panels and letters across the country, where new audiences would read about her story and reflect on their own hidden biases. Reports came back that people of all backgrounds stood in front of the panels, moved by the raw honesty of hateful words followed by contrite apologies. Eventually, the Orchard caretaker, well into old age, visited the traveling exhibit and through a phone call told Olivia that the Orchard had never felt more alive. It had become a gathering place for those tired of pretense, longing for genuine connection. Hearing that, Olivia smiled and closed her eyes for a moment, remembering her younger self strolling among the apple trees, the caretaker explaining that orchard soil was like hearts. It needed nurturing, turning over in gentle planting of seeds to bear fruit. This exhibit was another orchard in a way, letting seeds of empathy take root in those who saw it. That sense of completion led Olivia to the final step. She quietly forgave everyone who had ever mocked her at the golf course. She held no grudge, no desire to see them flounder. If they approached her in sincerity, she'd greet them with the same calm acceptance. Some, faced with her unwavering grace, found themselves unable to keep spouting hateful remarks. A few discovered they admired her, while others simply kept their distance, uneasy with a humility they couldn't understand. One warm afternoon, she returned to that same golf course. The manager, now a staunch ally, greeted her with respect. The staff recognized her at once. Dressed in simple attire this time in plain slacks and a short-sleeved blouse, she took a few swings on the range, practicing at her own pace. No onlookers sneered. Even the established members who used to flaunt their brands seemed subdued. As she hit a practice ball, she felt a small surge of contentment. She had no illusions of being a golf expert, but she was at peace in a setting that once tried to expel her. The orchard caretaker's words echoed again as if carried on a silent breeze. The orchard can flourish anywhere if given the right care. When she finished, a few staff members asked for tips on how to handle new guests who seemed out of place. She smiled, telling them that a welcome and a patient explanation were all that most newcomers needed. No one deserved the ridicule she had endured. The staff took her words to heart, promising to keep that approach alive. Quietly, she put her borrowed club away and waved goodbye. She left the course with her sneakers crunching the gravel path, never once looking over her shoulder. The hush of acceptance followed her, an echo of the orchard in every step. She didn't need to fight. She didn't have to prove anything. She simply stood still. And in that stillness, the whole world shifted. If you feel a light warmth in your chest, hold it close. Share this story. Let others find a moment of grace. And if you'd like more, you know where to come.